You know what's funny about dating apps these days? Every guy either wants to hook up immediately or runs the second they find out you have any kind of past. Like, sorry for being an actual woman with experiences, right? I'm Fiona. I'm 32, and apparently, I'm damaged goods according to half the men in this city. But honestly, I'm starting to think the problem isn't me. It's that everyone expects women to be these perfect little angels who never step outside the lines. My story starts about 2 years ago when I was married to Luke. We'd been together since our early 20s. We got married when I was 29 because, let's be real, the clock was ticking and he was stable. Luke worked in some corporate office doing spreadsheet stuff. Honestly, I never really paid attention to the details. I handled administrative work from home, which was perfect because it meant I could take care of our daughter, Riley, who was 8 at the time. Here's the thing about Luke that drove me absolutely insane. He was predictable to the point of being boring. Like, I could set my watch by his routine. Home at 5:47 p.m. every day, dinner by 6:30, help Riley with homework, watch whatever sports game was on, bed by 10:30. Weekends were grocery shopping, yard work, maybe a family movie. He was the type of guy who got excited about a new lawnmower or finding a good deal on car insurance. Don't get me wrong, he was a good dad, and he paid the bills on time. But God, where was the passion? Where was the excitement? I started playing online games as an escape. At first, it was just something to do during Riley's virtual school sessions, or when Luke was doing his weekend projects. But then it became this whole other world where I could be someone different, someone interesting, someone who didn't have to pretend that discussing mortgage rates was stimulating conversation. The gaming community was full of people from all over, and for the first time in years, I felt like I mattered. People wanted to talk to me. They laughed at my jokes. They thought I was smart and funny. Luke barely looked up from his phone when I talked anymore. But these people actually listened. They made me feel alive again. So yeah, I found my excitement elsewhere. And honestly, I don't regret it. What happened after? That's complicated. But those months when I felt desired and wanted, and like I was actually living instead of just existing, those were some of the best months I'd had in years. Meeting Damien changed everything, though I didn't realize it at first. He wasn't like the other guys in the gaming chat. He didn't try to impress me with stories about his job or his car. Damien was different, confident in this quiet, commanding way that made you want to know more. When he private messaged me after a particularly good game session, I felt this little thrill I hadn't experienced in years. "You're not like the other players here," he wrote. "There's something about you." See, that's the thing. Damien noticed things. He paid attention in ways Luke never did. We started talking privately during my gaming sessions, which happened to be when Luke was at work and Riley was at school. Damien told me about his lifestyle. He was experienced, he said, in ways most men weren't. He had particular interests, and he had a way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the world who could understand him. "Most women can't handle what I need," he told me during one of our longer conversations. "They think they want intensity until they get it. But you're different. I can tell. And God help me, I believed him." After years of Luke treating me like a roommate who occasionally did his laundry, having someone see me as special felt like oxygen after drowning. Damien explained that he preferred relationships with structure, clear expectations. He liked to be in control, and he needed partners who could appreciate that dynamic. "It's not for everyone," he said, "but when it works, it's the most intense connection you can imagine." He told me about other women he'd been with, how they competed for his attention, how rewarding it was to be chosen by someone so selective. The competitive aspect should have been a red flag, but honestly, it excited me. Here was this man who could have anyone, and he was interested in me. Me, the suburban mom who hadn't felt sexy in years. When he started explaining how his relationships worked, how he expected availability, how he rewarded good behavior, how he had zero tolerance for games or drama. It didn't sound controlling. It sounded like finally being with a man who knew what he wanted. Luke, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to any of this. He'd come home from work, ask about my day in that automatic way married people do, and I'd give him some generic answer about housework or Riley's school stuff. He never pressed for details, never seemed particularly interested in my inner world, which made it incredibly easy to have these long, intense conversations with Damien while Luke was sitting right there in the living room watching his sports highlights. "Your husband sounds like a nice guy," Damien said when I mentioned Luke during one of our talks. "But nice isn't what makes a woman feel alive, is it?" And damn if he wasn't right about that. Luke was nice. Luke was safe. Luke was predictable and reliable, and all those things that are supposed to matter. But when was the last time Luke had made my heart race? The first time Damien asked me to prove my commitment, I thought it would be something simple. Maybe meet him for coffee or send him a photo. Normal affair stuff, right? But Damien wasn't interested in normal. "I want you to send me a video," he said during one of our late-night chats. "Something that shows me you're serious about this." When I hesitated, he was quick to reassure me. "Nothing you wouldn't be comfortable with, just something that's ours." That first video was tame compared to what came later, but God, the rush I felt hitting send was incredible. Here I was doing something completely outside my normal boring life, something dangerous and exciting and just for me. When Damien responded with genuine appreciation, detailed feedback about what he liked, how it made him feel, I felt more alive than I had in years. "You're a natural," he told me. "Most women are so self-conscious, but you understand what this is about. You get it." And I did get it. This wasn't just about sex or rebellion. This was about finally being seen, really seen. The requests escalated gradually. Videos from different locations, specific outfits or positions. Times when the risk was higher, like when Luke was in the next room, or during Riley's virtual classes. Each time, Damien would explain how the challenge made it more meaningful. "Anyone can be brave when there's no risk," he said, "but this shows me who you really are." I started planning my days around Damien's requests. Luke's work schedule became my opportunity window. Riley's activities became my cover stories. I got incredibly good at calculating exactly how long I had and what I could accomplish in that time. The logistics became almost as thrilling as the acts themselves. The most intense incident happened on a random Tuesday afternoon. Damien had driven to my city, about 2 hours from where he lived, and wanted to meet not at a hotel or some discreet location, but in his car in my neighborhood. "I want to be close to your real life," he said. "I want to know I'm right there while your husband sits at home with no idea." I told Luke I was running errands and would be back in an hour. Meanwhile, Damien parked 3 blocks away, and I walked over like I was just going for a stroll around the neighborhood. The whole time, my heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the pure adrenaline rush of it all. Being with Damien in his car while Luke was literally sitting in our living room was the most intense experience of my life. The risk, the secrecy, the knowledge that I was living a completely double life. It was intoxicating. Damien kept talking about how brave I was, how most women couldn't handle this level of intensity, how special our connection was. After Damien left, I walked back home like nothing had happened. Luke was exactly where I'd left him, scrolling through his phone while some game played in the background. "How are your errands?" he asked without looking up. "Fine," I said. "Got everything I needed." And technically, that wasn't a lie. That night, lying next to Luke while he slept, I felt like I was living 2 completely different lives. There was daytime Fiona, mom, wife, woman who remembered to buy school supplies and schedule oil changes. And then there was real Fiona, the woman who took risks, who was desired, who was finally living instead of just existing. The unraveling started on a Thursday morning in March. I'd gotten careless, sloppy really, about deleting messages and clearing browser history. After months of successfully managing my double life, I guess I'd gotten overconfident. Luke came into the home office while I was in the shower looking for his phone charger and saw my laptop open with message notifications from Damien displayed right there on the screen. When I came downstairs, Luke was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open in front of him. Not confrontational, not angry, just reading the way he might read a work email or a news article. "Fiona," he said without looking up, "we need to talk." My first instinct was to slam the laptop shut and deny everything, but the evidence was right there. Months of conversations, photos, videos, our entire relationship laid out in explicit detail. Instead, I went on the offensive. "You went through my computer, Luke. That's a complete invasion of privacy." He finally looked at me then, and his expression was just tired, not devastated or furious like I'd expected, just exhausted. "Privacy," he said quietly. "Fiona, you've been having an affair for 4 months. You sent this man videos from our daughter's school event, from our bedroom." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, like he was reading a grocery list, made me angrier than if he'd started screaming. "You don't understand," I told him. "You never understand anything. Do you have any idea how lonely I've been? How ignored I've felt? So you decided to film yourself having sex in our driveway while I was upstairs helping Riley with her homework." Luke's voice never rose above a conversational level, which somehow made everything worse. "That was your solution to feeling lonely." I wanted him to fight back, to show some passion, to prove that he cared enough to be angry. Instead, he just kept reading through our messages with this clinical detachment that made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. "I'm calling a lawyer today," Luke said, standing up from the table. "I'll sleep in the guest room until we figure out living arrangements. We need to tell Riley something age-appropriate, and we need to figure out custody logistics." "Wait, what?" "Luke, we can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." The words came out automatically, though I wasn't even sure I meant them. "Work through this?" Luke picked up the laptop again. "Fiona, you've been living a completely separate life for months. You've been lying to my face every single day. What exactly do you think we're going to work through?" What happened next was probably the most humiliating part of the entire situation. After Luke's discovery, I immediately messaged Damien to explain what had happened and asked what we should do. His response was a single sentence. "This is exactly what I said would happen if you got careless. No, I'm sorry this happened. No, let's figure this out together." Just disappointment that I'd created drama, which he'd specifically said he didn't tolerate. When I tried to call him, he didn't answer. When I sent follow-up messages explaining that I was willing to leave Luke, that I was serious about choosing him, he responded with, "I think you misunderstood what this was. I was very clear about my boundaries from the beginning." Reading that message felt like being slapped. Months of "you're special" and "you understand me like no one else," and suddenly I'd misunderstood what we had. "What are you talking about?" I wrote back. "You said I was different. You said what we had was intense and meaningful." "It was fun," he replied. "But I told you from day one that I don't do drama. Your husband finding out is drama." And just like that, Damien was gone. Blocked on all platforms, phone number disconnected. 4 months of daily communication, of feeling understood and desired and alive, ended with the emotional equivalent of a shrug. Meanwhile, Luke was methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of conversations, timestamps of when I'd claimed to be running errands versus when I was actually with Damien, financial records showing money I'd spent on lingerie and other gifts for my affair partner. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal, though not in the way I'd expected. Luke wasn't trying to destroy me. He was just protecting himself and Riley with the same methodical approach he brought to everything else. His lawyer had put together a comprehensive timeline of my affair, complete with evidence of my lies, my financial deceptions, and documentation of times when my attention to the affair had impacted my parenting. Like the afternoon I'd been so focused on a video call with Damien that I'd forgotten to pick Riley up from her friend's house. The financial settlement was fair but devastating. Luke kept the house. I got half our savings account, and I was responsible for finding my own place. Since I'd been working part-time from home, my income wasn't enough to maintain anything close to our previous lifestyle. But the social fallout was almost worse than the financial reality. Word spread quickly in our neighborhood and social circles. Luke didn't go around bad-mouthing me, but he also didn't pretend our marriage had ended due to irreconcilable differences when people asked. Fiona had an affair, was apparently Luke's standard response. Not mean, not detailed, just factual, which meant everyone knew exactly why our marriage had ended. Most of our mutual friends gravitated toward Luke. He was the stable one, the one with the house and the consistent parenting schedule and no drama. I was the one who'd blown up her family for a man who wouldn't even take my calls anymore. Riley handled the divorce better than I'd expected, probably because Luke made such an effort to maintain her routine and stability, but I could see her pulling away from me emotionally, choosing to spend extra time at Luke's when she had the option, being less chatty during our phone calls. A year and a half after the divorce was finalized, I was finally ready to start dating again. Or at least, that's what I told myself as I created profiles on various apps. The reality was more complicated. I was lonely. I missed having a partner, and I was tired of spending every evening alone in my apartment while Riley was at Luke's. But dating as a divorced 32-year-old single mum turned out to be its own special kind of hell. The first few guys I matched with seemed promising until we got to the "what ended your marriage" conversation. "So you cheated" was the typical response once guys pieced together the timeline. Not a question, just a statement that changed the entire dynamic of whatever we'd been building. Some guys saw it as an opportunity. If I'd cheated once, clearly I was the type of woman who was up for anything, right? They'd push for sex on the first date, make crude comments about what I must be into, treat me like I was damaged goods who should be grateful for any attention. Others went the opposite direction, treating me like I had some kind of moral deficiency that made me unsuitable for anything serious. "I'm looking for someone with traditional values," one guy told me, "someone who understands commitment." The few relationships I did manage to start never lasted more than a few months. There was always some issue. They couldn't handle my custody schedule with Riley. They were intimidated by my sexual experience. They thought I was too intense or had too much baggage. Meanwhile, Luke seemed to be doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. Through Riley, I heard about his new girlfriend, someone he'd met through work, who is apparently great with kids and had never been married before. Someone without my complicated history or emotional baggage. "She's really nice," Riley told me during one of our weekends together. "She makes these cookies that look like flowers, and she knows how to braid hair in this cool way." Perfect. Luke had found himself a nice, uncomplicated woman who made cookies and braided hair and probably thought his lawn mowing routine was charming instead of soul-crushing. But here's what really bothered me. Everyone acted like Luke. Finding happiness was proof that I'd been the problem all along. Like the fact that he could move on and build something healthy meant that our marriage had failed entirely because of my choices. Nobody wanted to acknowledge that maybe Luke had learned from our relationship too. Maybe he was putting more effort into romance with his new girlfriend because he'd seen what happened when you took your partner for granted. But no, the narrative was that Luke was this perfect husband who'd been wronged by his selfish, cheating wife. 6 months into Luke's new relationship, I was still struggling to find anything that lasted more than a few dates. Still living in my cramped apartment, still working longer hours to make ends meet, still dealing with the social fallout from choices I'd made 2 years earlier. And the worst part, sometimes late at night when I couldn't sleep, I still thought about Damien. Not because I wanted him back. I could see clearly now that he'd never really cared about me at all, but because those months with him had been the last time I'd felt truly alive, truly desired, truly like myself, instead of just someone going through the motions of an acceptable life, which probably made me exactly as pathetic as everyone thought I was. But at least I'd felt something real. even if it turned out to be a lie. That's more than I can say for the years I spent pretending Luke's predictable routine was enough to build a life on. Everyone wants simple stories with clear villains and victims, but real life is messier than that. Real marriages die slowly through years of taking each other for granted and letting passion fade into routine. I wasn't proud of how I'd handled things, but I wasn't going to pretend that our marriage had been perfect before I'd looked elsewhere. Still, sitting alone in my apartment 2 years after everything fell apart, I had to admit that my plan to find something better hadn't exactly worked out the way I'd hoped.